Welcome to the Bedtime Sleep, a place where science gently becomes story, where stars aren't just distant lights, but soft threads weaving through your thoughts. If this journey makes your night a little more curious, a little more calm, remember to subscribe for new stories every night, and share your quiet questions with us in the comments. Tonight, let's lie back together and begin beneath a sky made of stone and wonder. The night stretches above you like an ocean turned inside out. You feel its weightless depth as if it presses gently on your skin. Up there, beyond the chatter of cities and the hush of trees, float silent stones, old, forgotten, waiting. They drift in orbits that have not changed for eons, spinning like slow dancers in a grand, invisible ballroom. They have no names, no owners, no footsteps on their surface. They are the leftovers of a beginning, the crumbs of creation. Some are no bigger than a grain of salt, others wide enough to swallow mountains whole. They tumble in blackness, brushed by nothing but time. But inside them, gold, platinum, water, iron, the stuff you know, the stuff you use. The stuff we once thought belonged only to Earth. You imagine one now, floating, cold, spinning slowly. Its surface is pitted and gray, untouched. Inside, metals rest in perfect stillness, as if sleeping since the solar system first blinked awake. They are not planets, not moons, not stars. They are in-between things, fragments of what almost became. Not quite born, not quite lost. They orbit the sun like thoughts that never found words. And yet, they shine with promise. To some, they look like treasure. To others, like stepping stones. To you tonight, they are questions. What would it mean to reach one? To touch something that has never been touched? To dig into silence and call it yours? Would it feel like discovery or intrusion? You close your eyes and feel yourself floating, weightless among these quiet giants. No noise, no borders, no fences, just motion and the glow of distant stars, casting soft shadows across stone. You drift past one that gleams strangely, a shimmer of metal beneath the rock, not polished, not worked, just waiting. It feels less like a mine and more like a memory. These asteroids, these sky orphans, are leftovers from the making of planets. They never found a home, so they became homes for secrets instead. Billions of them move silently through space, more than there are people on Earth, and not one has ever laid claim to its own name. They belong to no country, no company, no voice. But now, from Earth, voices rise. Eyes sharpen. Plans form. We have machines that could reach them, claws and drills and solar sails. We could chase them down, mine their metals, bring pieces home. But then you wonder, does home stretch that far? If a stone was born beyond Earth, should its riches ever touch our soil? You float with this thought, turning slowly. Space is not silent because it has nothing to say. It's silent because we have not yet asked the right questions. Is finding value the same as finding meaning? If we pull gold from the stars, will we also pull away their mystery? Can a treasure remain a wonder once we weigh it? Store it? Spend it? The stars above you remain unchanged. They neither welcome nor deny. They simply are as they've always been. You recall how, once, Earth felt this distant. Before boats crossed oceans, before names filled maps. Back when wonder was wider than ownership. Before borders drew lines across rivers and hills. Before humans claimed what the sky never asked to give. Now the same eyes turn upward. Not with fear, but with focus. Not with reverence, but with reach. And yet, in your breath, you feel hesitation. The kind that hums before a step is taken. The kind that wonders if the step should be taken at all. There's no law up here. No walls. No signs. only motion, only the ancient language of gravity. And still, the question circles like a satellite. If no one owns the stars, can anyone own their stones? You settle into stillness again, letting the asteroid belt pass like a dream. Not yours, not anyone's, just there spinning, waiting. But somewhere, back on Earth, a pin scratches across paper, a treaty, a paragraph, a clause. Someone tries to write rules for dust. And this dust, this drifting gold above, does not resist. It simply continues, silent, orbiting, undecided, and so you drift with it. Thought trailing thought like vapor. One question remains, tugging gently, as if tied to your breath. Who first laid claim to silence and dust? And when did wonder begin to require permission? The stars above you don't feel new. They feel like something you've known forever. Not because you've touched them, but because someone, long ago, once looked at them with love. Before steel and science, before we counted moons and chased planets, there were watchers, people whose only tools were silence and sky. You closed your eyes, and now you are one of them. No machines, no math, just the hush of night. A cold stone under your feet, and a canvas above, stitched with flickers you don't yet understand. You sit by a fire. The air smells like ash and pine. And the stars? They're gods to you. They move like stories, slow and sacred. You call one the eye, another the river, another the great animal that sleeps in light. And as the years pass, you tell these stories to others. The names settle into memory, pass from voice to voice like breath. The sky becomes a book, but not one made of paper. It is written in motion, edited only by time. You rise with the sun and sleep with the moon. When the stars shift, so does your season. You know that the cold is coming, not by calendars, but by constellations. The sky doesn't belong to you. It holds you, reminds you, guides you, but it is not yours. You don't ask to own the stars. You ask to understand them, and that is enough. Centuries pass. Stone becomes bronze. Fires become torches. Eyes become lenses. Now you watch from a tower. You trace the moon's shadow across stone walls. You draw careful marks, the first science, not for profit, but for prediction. Your people build temples aligned to stars, pyramids that echo the sun's steps, circles of stone that sing when light arrives. Each structure is a question carved in rock. What is this sky? Why does it turn? What does it want from us? Still, you don't try to own the stars. You worship them. You fear them. You trust them, even when storms come, and crops fail, and darkness lingers too long. You don't blame the sky. You listen harder. Then comes a shift. The telescope opens a new kind of eye. Suddenly, you see Jupiter's moons, rings around Saturn, cracks on the moon's face. The heavens stop being perfect. They become touchable, flawed, real. It's not heresy anymore. It's discovery. The stars start to become thingsy, measurable, nameable, possibly reachable. And in that moment, wonder begins to change. You are no longer just looking. You are searching. The names you once gave in poetry become labels in Latin. The myths become maps. The gods become coordinates. You count asteroids now, catalog them, classify them. You speak of them in clusters and belts. You imagine ships reaching them, tools digging into them. But beneath all this change, a soft thread remains. The same thread that ran through your first firelit story. It's still wonder, just shaped differently. Still, you pause tonight and ask, what did we lose when we stopped naming stars like poems? What did we gain when we started numbering them instead? The ancient eyes that once looked up never imagined ownership. They imagined meaning. They weren't thinking of mining. They were thinking of messages. Was Orion a hunter? Or a hint? Was the North Star a compass? Or a comfort? You feel the slow drift of time in these thoughts. One moment you are ancient. The next, you are now, surrounded by satellites. You float in a world where stars are data, where a flicker means a planet, where a shadow means a resource. And still, some part of you wants to return to that first silence, that first breath under stars, when the sky was not a destination, but a mystery. The story of space didn't begin with rockets. It began with a face turned upward and a heart full of questions. And now you wonder, if those ancient eyes could see us today, what would they think of our machines, of our maps, of our desire to touch and take? Would they be proud or puzzled? Would they see progress or forgetfulness? The stars above still burn the same. They don't ask for names. They don't demand laws. They simply shine. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth of ancient memory wrap around you. And in that soft space between past and present, a new question begins to form. A question not about stars, but about us. The moon is close now. You can almost reach out and brush the dust. But it doesn't move. It doesn't welcome. It simply lies there, quiet, untouched, still holding its breath. You hovered just above the surface, watching shadows stretch from a distant ridge. And then you see it. A flag, faded, motionless. A fabric square planted long ago. It stands in silence. No wind to ruffle it. No air to carry its colors. Only memory holds it in place. It does not claim the moon. It simply marks the moment. We were here. That was all it said. And yet, in the decades since, that silent cloth has stirred louder questions. Because a flag is never just fabric. It is history. It is intent. It is the beginning of a conversation we're still trying to finish. You float past that flag, past the frozen imprints of boots pressed into dust. They haven't faded. There is no rain here to wash them away. Time moves differently on the moon, and so do ideas. Back on Earth, time erases boundaries with erosion and war. But here, a single step may last forever, and the meaning of that step may echo far beyond its silence. You ask yourself, was the flag a gesture of pride, or the first quiet line in the dust? Not a border, not yet, but maybe a beginning. After Apollo, more questions rose than ships. Who gets to land here? Who decides where to dig, or what to leave untouched? Can you plant something in a place no one owns? And if no one owns it, can anyone truly use it? You turn toward Earth now, a shimmering sphere, spinning beneath the clouds. That's where the rules came from. Rules made by people, with pens, with power, with dreams that reached beyond their own sky. In 1967, they signed a promise. The moon and all of space belongs to no one. The Outer Space Treaty, not carved in stone, not echoed across galaxies. Just ink, just words, just hope, written down before rockets could go too far. It said no nation may claim the moon. No country may make it their own. Space is for peace. Space is for science. Space is the province of all humankind. You whisper the words aloud. They sound noble. They sound kind. But they are light, light enough to lift, drift, bend in the wind of ambition. Even in orbit, laws are shaped by gravity, the gravity of want. The treaty never mentioned corporations. It said nothing of billionaires or bots. It didn't foresee a time when flags would be logos and explorers would wear badges. not of nations, but of brands. You imagine it now. A lander with a company name. A robot mining dust beside a flag that no longer represents a country. Only a claim. Only a stake. Only a statement. We are here, and this is ours. Is it? You drift slowly along the moon's rim, where the earthlight gleams like quiet silver. The craters below are older than memory. Some have never been seen by eyes, only scanned by cameras and counted by maps. But a map doesn't mean ownership. It only means attention. And attention has a way of turning into intent. You remember how land was once taken on Earth. First walked on, then charted, then claimed. The same dance seems to have begun again. Only higher this time. Quieter. Cleaner. But perhaps not so different. Is space truly empty? Or is it simply unspoken for? And what does it mean to speak for it? To lay laws over silence? You look again at the flag. Not blowing. Not proud. Just there. Like punctuation at the end of a question. No one has yet answered. Because law is not just about what is written. It is about what is respected. And space is still learning what it respects. The treaties say no weapons. But what if mining tools become machines of force? The treaties say peace. But peace has always been easier on paper than in practice. Even the moon, with its stillness, cannot silence the sound of human want. You drift past another sight. A robotic rover, asleep forever in the dust. It was sent not to take, but to learn. You like that. Machines built to ask questions. Not to own. Not to extract. Just to wonder. You wonder what laws they followed. Not legal ones, but moral ones. Did we arrive as visitors? Or settlers? As students? Or surveyors? Your thoughts drift like lunar dust. Fine and slow. The moon does not pull on you the way Earth does. It lets your mind float freely, but still orbits the same question. Can we share what we cannot hold? If the moon belongs to no one, should it be treated like a museum, a temple, a commons? Or will it become what so many other frontiers became? Claimed, divided, spent? Your breath softens. The moon turns gently beneath you. Its far side, unseen for centuries, still holds a mystery, untouched by law or story. And you think, perhaps the void isn't truly lawless. Perhaps it has laws we haven't yet learned to hear. Not written in treaties, but in time, in rhythm, in silence. Because silence, too, can be sacred. You close your eyes, and the last thing you see is a boot print. Still there, still speaking. Not for power, not for claim, just for being. The page is thin. The ink is quiet. You imagine it resting on a polished table somewhere on Earth. Light as breath, heavy with meaning. A treaty, a promise dressed in words. Drafted not by stars, but by humans staring at them, with wide eyes and uncertain hands. The Outer Space Treaty, signed in 1967, a document that tried to tame the infinite, with sentences instead of spacecraft. You drift now, not through space, but through intentions, through lines of text meant to stretch beyond borders, beyond ego, beyond war. It begins with peace. It insists that the moon and other celestial bodies shall be used for the benefit of all. No weapons, no nations planting stakes, no military bases carved into craters. And yet, treaties are made on Earth. But space does not live on Earth. It has no courts, no enforcers, only silence, and the long memory of orbits. You float beside the idea of it now, not a station or a satellite, but the concept of agreement, an invisible structure trying to hold shape, in a place with no walls. The treaty is noble, beautiful even, but it is written in air, and air, as you know, does not reach space. Its language is filled with hope, but also with hesitations, ambiguities, soft phrases that sound good, until someone wants something more. What does "for the benefit of all" mean? When a company mines a rock, 100 million miles from anyone else. What does "no appropriation" mean? When a private satellite lands, digs, stores, and sells? You breathe slowly, letting these questions settle. The treaty doesn't ban mining. It just bans ownership of celestial bodies. So, you can use the resources, but not the place. It's like saying you can drink from a river, but never claim the riverbed. What happens when someone builds a dam or bottles the water? Is it still sharing? Or is it just the quiet beginning of control? You picture diplomats around that 1967 table. The Cold War hums outside the room. Rockets bloom like dangerous flowers. And yet, they choose peace. They write their fears and their hopes into clauses and commas. They try to imagine a future where no one plants flags for conquest, only curiosity. You admire them for that. They were writing for a future that hadn't happened yet, trying to protect something no one had touched. But futures grow strange, and promises, once made, can blur in the light of new technology. Now companies build ships. Private names stretch toward the moon. Mining missions begin with investor briefings, not philosophical debates. The treaty never says they can't. It only whispers warnings. No one is sure how to enforce. And so new documents appear. National space laws, frameworks, agreements between small groups of countries. Each one adds a brushstroke to an unfinished painting, a vision of space not as a mystery, but as a marketplace. You drift through these pages in your mind. Some are written with good intentions, others with ambition tucked into the margins. Some promise transparency, others reserve rights quietly, waiting for the future to arrive. But you wonder, who gets to write the next treaty? Whose voice shapes the void? And what happens if someone decides not to listen? There are no space police, no global court on Mars. Only trust, only a fragile web, spun from old paper and distant hope. And trust, like a tether, must be tested in gravity. Will it hold? When the first asteroid is cracked open, when one country profits and another watches, when someone finds more than metal, something unexpected, something sacred, something they want to keep, the treaty doesn't answer these. It can't. It was never meant to hold everything, just to begin. So you float again, letting your breath move like a quiet orbit. And you think, maybe the laws we write in space aren't only about ownership. Maybe they're about how we choose to see. Do we see asteroids as resources, or relics, as gifts, or opportunities? Do we arrive in space as guests, or settlers? You look down toward Earth again, spinning in its soft blue haze. Every law ever made was written there. Every conflict, every agreement, every broken promise. And now we've carried that history upward, into a silence that does not forget. The stars don't rush. They don't argue. They don't sign. But they will bear the marks we leave. And in their stillness, they wait for us to decide, not just what we will build, but who we will be. While we build it, you float above Earth's glow, its soft swirl of cloud and sea curling quietly beneath you. But your gaze isn't downward tonight. It's upward, outward, toward the black that isn't empty. Not anymore. Once, only governments climbed toward the sky. Their ships bore flags, their astronauts wore emblems. They launched with speeches and solemn intent. But now the rockets rise differently. Not from secret launch pads, but from live streams and investor calls. Their fuselages gleam not with flags, but with logos. Private hands have reached the stars, and those hands are not empty. You watch them build. Factories, spacecraft, mining arms. Not on the moon yet. Not quite, but close enough to matter. Plans ripple through boardrooms and slide decks. Pitch decks speak of trillions in ore, of platinum veins in silent stone. Projections chart returns from rocks that never knew a name, and always beneath the numbers. A question they rarely speak aloud. If no one owns it, can anyone take it? You drift through that question now. Like stardust caught in orbit, the outer space treaty still whispers. Space belongs to no one. But these companies do not ask to own asteroids. They ask only to use them, to take from them, to profit from them. And that difference, subtle, semantic, might be everything. Because if a company can scoop metal from a drifting rock and return it to Earth, to sell, to spend, to build, then haven't they taken something that was once shared by silence? They argue it's not ownership, just extraction, just participation, just progress. But you wonder, if one hand can reach into the cosmos and take, what stops another from doing the same? Only faster, harder. Without permission, you drift beside a simulation now. A gleaming mining bot approaching a carbon-rich asteroid. Its claws extend. Lasers scan. Its arms begin to break the surface. There is no ritual, no introduction, just function, just utility, just a belief that usefulness makes a thing ours. The robot pulls stone from silence. And somewhere, far below, a shareholder smiles. You try to feel both sides. The dream of it. A future powered by space. Built with resources that require no war, no drilling on Earth, no deforestation. Asteroids carry iron and nickel, water and carbon, materials we've spent centuries extracting from soil and suffering. What if we could spare the Earth by mining the sky? What if the stars could sustain us, not just inspire us? You feel the nobility in that dream. But you also feel its edge, because dreams, when paired with profit, move quickly, and the stars do not move at our pace. You float back toward a diagram, a projection of how one company plans to map the asteroid belt, each dot marked not with a star's poetic name, but with potential value. $3 trillion, $5 billion, rare earth elements, accessible orbit. Numbers replace mystery. Coordinates replace myth. But you wonder, what happens to wonder? When it's charted into revenue, do we still look up with awe? Or only calculation? Private companies do not ask permission from the stars. They ask from governments, who now offer policies, frameworks, encouragement. Some nations even grant licenses to mine bodies they do not and cannot own. A quiet shift begins. Laws once meant to limit power, now just to support it, because innovation, for all its brilliance, often outpaces wisdom. You hover now at the edge of one such future. An orbital platform, launching autonomous extractors into deep space. They move like thoughts, quick, invisible, carving paths through stone and time. And no one watches them, not in real time, not in real silence. They return with payloads of dust and dreams. And Earth, hungry and grateful, takes them in. But you whisper, what are we building? Are we building a future where resources are abundant and conflict unnecessary? Or a future where those with the fastest machines reach first and take most? You feel no anger, only stillness, only a widening of questions. Progress is not wrong. Exploration is not greed, but without pause, without reflection, they can forget their own beginnings. You remember the first eyes that looked up. They saw constellations, not commodities. They named the stars for their shape, not their price. Now we name rocks for their yield, and some part of that feels unfinished. You drift between orbit and thought, a satellite of wondering, a listener in the quiet. And then a softer question arrives, gentler than the rest. What would it look like to touch the stars and leave them whole? You hover quietly now, adrift in a belt of ancient stone. The sun glints on spinning metal skin as a slow asteroid passes inches from your breath. It's not smooth, not like the silver ships that chase it. Its surface is jagged, shadowed, cratered, a story etched in silence. You drift closer. It does not see you. It does not care. It simply moves, a monument to inertia. But inside this floating fossil, buried deep in cold darkness, sleep the metals we know: iron, nickel, cobalt, and rarer treasures, too: platinum, palladium, osmium, elements you touch every day without thinking. In wires, in circuits, in engines and phones and satellites. Atoms born before Earth had a name. This asteroid is not a treasure chest. It is a time capsule, a fragment of a broken planet, or the failed beginning of one, a leftover from the birth of the solar system. Never melted, never molded, just drifting, just waiting. You wonder how long it has been untouched. 4 billion years? 5. You whisper the numbers, but they don't feel real. Time here doesn't tick. It floats. And yet, somewhere far behind you, on a different world, a satellite maps this rock. A team watches graphs, measures mass, calculates yield. They call it 16 Psyche, or Ryugu, or 1986 DA. Numbers and letters, designations, inventory. They don't see the dust. They see the metal, the worth, the potential. You drift slowly around the asteroid's edge, where sunlight reveals metallic veins, like roots frozen mid-growth. You imagine cracking one open, filling a cargo bay, returning triumphant. But then, what next? These metals, they promise wealth beyond measure. One platinum-rich asteroid could outvalue the entire global economy, enough to build new worlds, or destabilize the old one. What happens to markets when gold rains from the sky, when the rare becomes common, and scarcity dissolves? In the vacuum of space, you picture it: cargo ships returning with endless payloads, banks adjusting, nations scrambling, prices falling, power shifting. Value is a delicate story we tell ourselves, and new chapters often come with consequences. The metal inside the rock doesn't know its worth. It doesn't know it's wanted. It simply is. It simply waits. But want is loud, and where there is want, there is competition. You feel the quiet rise of it now. Countries forming space agencies, corporations forming launch schedules, proposals drafted in the language of need. Not need for knowledge, but need for material, need for control. And suddenly, this quiet asteroid becomes the center of attention, not for what it means, but for what it's made of. You wonder if that's fair, or if fairness matters. In a place where nothing yet belongs to anyone, you float downward, imagining a drill piercing this stone, dust spiraling, or collected, profits rising. But you feel a tremor, not in the rock, but in your thoughts, is taking from a place you do not live, the same as mining your own soil. Is distance a form of detachment? If no one is harmed, is it still a theft? Or is it a harvest? The asteroid spins on, unaware of your dilemma. It does not need answers. Only motion. Only time. But you must ask. Because the machines we send carry our hands, and our hands carry our choices. You think of Earth's mines, the tunnels, the scars, the price paid not just in labor, but in rivers, forests, breath. Asteroids, they say, offer a better way. No habitats to destroy, no people to displace. Just rock, just vacuum, just potential. But Earth's history warns. Even uninhabited places can suffer from human hands. Not with blood, but with indifference, with exploitation, disguised as innovation. So you float and pause, between promise and price, between resource and reverence. Because it is possible, you think, to touch the stars with clean hands, but only if we remember that they are not just materials, waiting to be melted. They are echoes, beginnings, stories without mouths. And if we listen, they might teach us something we've forgotten. That value is not always measured in weight. That wealth is not always worth. You look once more at the shimmering veins, the glints beneath the rock. They are beautiful. They are patient. They are waiting, but not just to be taken. Maybe, just maybe, to be understood. The stars do not care who is right. They do not keep minutes. They do not recognize borders. And still, you drift through them, thinking of Earth and its endless rules. On Earth, we invented fairness, wrote it into books, built buildings with pillars, hung scales in marble halls. We created courts, appointed judges, called for order. But here, above the clouds, there are no gavels, no flags hanging behind chairs, no floor to stand on. When things go wrong, and things will go wrong, you can feel it now. A tension growing, not like a storm, but like a quiet shift in gravity. The more we reach into space, the more we ask of it. And the more we ask, the more we must answer. Who is responsible? When a mining bot crashes into another, who pays? When orbital debris collides with a private ship, what happens? When two companies land on the same rock and claim the same resource with the same license from different governments, you drift slowly, like a thought searching for ground. There is no space court, no interplanetary judge, no global referee orbiting in a robe. And yet, laws have begun to rise like scaffolding, bits of policy and fragments of treaties, held together with good faith and duct tape. The Outer Space Treaty, the Moon Agreement, National Space Acts, industry guidelines, unofficial codes of conduct, each one trying to answer the questions we haven't yet asked. But law depends on jurisdiction, and in space, jurisdiction floats. It is claimed by where a spacecraft was launched, or by whose flag it flies, or by agreements made. In rooms with long tables and little windows, you float through a thought experiment now. Two companies collide on an asteroid. No humans, no casualties, just wreckage, just loss. Who's at fault? Who investigates? Who decides? If one ship was launched from Luxembourg and the other from the United States, whose court hears the case? Whose law applies? To rock that belongs to no one? Is it Earth law? Or does space need something new? You drift past a model court. Build in your imagination. It floats in orbit. A great white dome, with windows that face the stars. Inside, no judges wear wigs. They wear earpieces, linked to languages and laws, written across dozens of earthbound lands. They try to balance gravity and intent, risk and right, profit and principle. But that court doesn't exist. Not yet. Maybe not ever. For now, disputes return to Earth. handled by the states that claim the companies. And you see the flaw. When the judge knows the flag, when the outcome benefits the powerful, does justice still weigh evenly? You turn now, floating over imagined headlines. Mining dispute escalates in cislunar orbit. Asteroid collision lawsuit heads to arbitration. Sovereignty questioned in lunar settlement conflict. It sounds absurd, until it doesn't. Until the ships are real. Until the claims are real. Until the profit is too large to ignore. On Earth, borders divide us. But in space, we might divide over the lack of them. You imagine one day, a court hearing conducted on Mars. The plaintiff appears via hologram. The defendant via signal delay. And somewhere, a slow voice begins to define what fairness means when time itself stretches. But that is far away. For now, law lags behind launch, and justice stumbles without gravity. You drift through that idea. How fairness might work in weightlessness. How rights might exist without land, without nations, without fences. Perhaps space law must be softer, more flexible, a net rather than a wall. Perhaps it must be written not in concrete, but in clouds, structured enough to catch, gentle enough to float. But can such a thing be trusted? When metal meets metal, and profit meets pressure? Because even in the stars, conflict follows currency. And if law cannot rise with us, then power will lead the way instead. You picture an unlicensed drill, boring into an asteroid. Quick, quiet, profitable. No one nearby. No one to stop it. Only an unanswered rule, and a delay in enforcement. Laws without courts are hopes, not guarantees. They are wishes, wrapped in policy. And space is too quiet for wishful thinking. You wonder now, not just what laws will be written, but who will write them? Who speaks for the moon? For the rocks that orbit Jupiter? For the darkness between? You exhale slowly. There is no answer. Not yet. Only the beginning of one. A whisper in a vacuum. A question drifting gently. If we do not build justice where there is none, what will fill the silence instead? You hover in a sea of black. Your breath gentle. Your thoughts even softer. Below, an asteroid spins without knowing. Above, a satellite traces its orbit, steady as a second hand. And somewhere on Earth, a screen flickers to life, a rectangle of light. Pixels arranged to resemble distance. A map of this place you now drift beside. No one has touched it. No boots have pressed this dust. No fingers have brushed its walls. But still, the coordinates are locked. The surface divided by numbers. Grids drawn by hands that have never felt the cold. You breathe in slowly. This isn't new. Humans have always mapped the unknown. Once with stars, then with ink, now with code. Before ships landed, they charted coasts. Before mountains were climbed, they sketched their shadows. But in those maps, there was waiting. A silence between lines. A reverence. Now, something feels different. These maps are faster, sharper, lined not with legend, but with logic. They do not wonder. They calculate. You drift beside one now. A holographic chart of lunar regions, color-coded by mineral density. Iron here, helium-3 there, water ice in the craters near the poles. Each color, a signal. Each signal, a plan. You trace one zone. Already marked, designated for exploration. By whom? For whom? It doesn't say. You float through digital airspace, passing through proposed landing zones, mining corridors, safety buffers, Lines. So many lines, drawn across a place that never knew lines. The moon never asked to be measured, nor the asteroids, nor Mars. But humans mark what they see, and increasingly, what they want. A map begins as memory, then it becomes intention, and finally, ownership, even when no one says it out loud. You remember Earth's old maps, the ones with dragons at the edges, with oceans filled in by imagination. They warned. They wondered. They told you where knowledge ended. Today's maps leave no dragons. Only data. Only coordinates. Only opportunities. They promise certainty. And certainty can be dangerous. When built on unfamiliar ground, you pause by a Martian grid. A settlement concept proposed by a private firm. Dome here. Greenhouse there. Extraction zone 3 kilometers east. No humans yet. Just plans. But in these lines, you see the early shape of ownership. The sketch. Before the signature. The claim. Before the question. What happens when two maps overlap? When one line crosses another? When one vision forgets another was already drawn? Conflict doesn't always begin with force. Sometimes it begins with lines, and the stars cannot erase them. You drift back now, past 1,000 digital worlds. Maps of comets, caves beneath the moon's crust, floating way stations imagined in orbit, each one perfect, each one clean, unspoiled by breath, untouched by time. But the moment they are drawn, they begin to belong to someone, and that belonging, that sense of this is ours, grows quietly, like frost on glass. It is subtle, but not harmless, because the mind that maps is the mind that builds, and the mind that builds must decide what is sacred and what is expendable. Is that crater a holy place, or just a deposit site? Is that valley history, or a future pipeline? Maps don't answer. They only suggest. And sometimes, a suggestion is all it takes. You exhale slowly. In space, there are no fences, no footsteps, no footprints, no flags fluttering. But there are lines. In documents, in blueprints, in dreams. And sometimes, those lines come before understanding, before listening, before asking. You wonder now, can we map gently? Can we chart a future without dividing it too early? Maybe, but only if we remember that to map is not to own, and to see is not to take. Some places deserve to remain unnamed, undrawn, unknown, or, at the very least, to be met slowly. You look again at the asteroid beneath you. Its contours raw, its mystery intact. No grid yet, no name, no line. And you feel grateful, not for the wealth inside it, but for the silence around it. The silence we still have a chance to respect. You float now through possibility, not stars, not stone, but sketches suspended in light. Visions made from hope, dreams drawn by engineers, and whispered by poets. Below you, the moon lies unchanged, still silent, still waiting, but above it, ideas bloom, habitats shaped like honeycombs, solar farms stretching across regolith plains, greenhouses gleaming under transparent shells, growing lettuce from lunar dust. These are the dreams, not yet built, but already living, in minds, in plans, in pixels. You drift beside one, a rendering of a settlement. 5 domes linked by tunnels, a landing pad, a mining station tucked into a shadowed crater. No people, just potential. It glows softly in simulation. Every light a promise. We could be here, and behind every glowing model is a human mind that believed it could happen. You listen closely, Al, to the voices behind these dreams. Futurists, scientists, investors, students. Some speak of survival. Earth won't last forever. We need a second home. Others speak of curiosity. What can we learn from living differently? How does soil behave on Mars? And some dream simply to dream. They look at space and feel something loosen in their chest. A possibility, a longing, a reason. Because space is not just a direction. It is a canvas, and every generation wants to paint something on it. You float gently between models. Some massive cities in orbit, spinning slowly for gravity. A ballet of architecture and physics. Others are humble. A tent. A single rover. A lone botanist planting the first seed. In Martian dust. Each one. A story not yet lived. And yet, they press forward. Designs become proposals. Proposals seek funding. Funding becomes hardware. And the dream begins to touch reality. But every dream, no matter how bright, has a shadow. You see it now, tucked behind the domes. Beneath the funding charts, in the footnotes of press releases, logistics, risks, compromises. Who gets to go? Who gets left behind? What does it cost to turn vacuum into neighborhood? You imagine it. The first settlers stepping into a lunar habitat. Suits creaking, hearts thudding. They leave Earth not just behind, but beneath. They bring pieces of it with them. Language, memory, conflict, a society. Compressed into a capsule, you drift above a habitat mock-up. Walls lined with algae. A 3D printed floor from moon dust. But what isn't printed is the unspoken pressure to thrive in isolation, to succeed where failure means vacuum. And beyond that, a question lingers. Are we building sanctuaries or silos? Are we escaping Earth or repeating it with better insulation? You breathe out slowly, watching another animation begin. Children running beneath artificial light. Families growing food. Machines humming with quiet purpose. It's beautiful. A lullaby in steel. A hope written in dust. But you wonder, does dreaming make it right? Just because we can doesn't mean we must. Just because we must doesn't mean we should. At least, not without pause. The moon has slept for billions of years. Mars has known only wind and silence. To dream upon them is a boldness. To reshape them is a responsibility. Still, you do not judge the dreamers. They're like you. They look upward and see possibility instead of nothingness. And that is precious. That is human. But dreams, when heavy with machinery and money, must be held carefully, like fire, in thin air, because vision can build futures. But it can also erase what came before. You look again at the domes, at the blinking lights, at the imagined harvests. They're beautiful, and one day, they may be real. But first, we must ask, can we build without burning? Can we inhabit without erasing? Can we dream with open hands? You float above the moon, its craters still untouched. You feel the warmth of hope. You feel the chill of caution. And in between, you feel the future, waiting to be written, not in haste, but in care. You float downward, drifting softly over the skin of the moon. It seems still now, a desert wrapped in lightless hush, where each crater is a breath long held. But stillness is not the same as absence. And silence is not always empty. You look closer. A pit yawns below. Its rim jagged from impact. Its center shadowed in frost and time. They call it a basin, but it feels like a scar, formed in violence, and then forgotten, but not erased. Beneath the surface, beneath the dust, beneath the dreams, lie layers we have not yet read. Regolith, fine powdered memory, settled grain by grain, for billions of years. Each layer a page, each page a clue. But some pages, you realize, are not meant to be torn open. You drift beside a rover now. Its wheels press into ash. Its drills descend slowly, quietly, carving into what no hand has touched. It searches for water, for fragments of ancient collisions. But what if it finds more? What if something rests below? Not alien cities, but alien signs of something once alive? Simple, silent, old, bacterial fossils, mineral traces shaped by breath, structures that don't occur by accident. You exhale slowly. The moon is barren. As far as we know, Mars too. And yet, we've only scratched the surface, and surfaces can deceive. You drift into memory, Al. Not yours, but Earth's. We once thought our deserts were lifeless. Then we listened. We once believed the deep ocean void. Then we dove. Life hides. It adapts. It lingers. In shadows. In stone. In silence. So why not here? Why not once? Why not deep beneath the dust? We now seek to strip. Not all discoveries glitter. Some simply lie still. And the question echoes. If we find something that once lived, what do we owe it? Respect? Preservation? A pause? Or do we dig on it in the name of progress? Profit? Pragmatism? You float above another plan. A blueprint for lunar mining. The extraction path carved through ancient crust. Mapped by sensors, but not yet touched. You imagine a drill stopping. Not because it hits resistance, but because it hits meaning. What then? The machines are not built to wonder, only to remove. But you can wonder. And in that wondering is a kind of wisdom we haven't yet encoded. Maybe the bones we find won't be shaped like ours. Maybe they won't be bones at all. Just subtle patterns, alignments, chemical signatures, written in silence. Will we recognize them? Will we care? Or will we wipe them away? With the next layer of excavation, you remember Earth's ruins. Temples buried in sand. Cities swallowed by jungle. Sometimes we preserve them. Sometimes we pave over them. Space may offer us the same choice, and the gravity is different, but the ethics are the same. You drift into a quiet field, on a Martian plain, a flat stretch of rock and wind, beneath which something ancient may still hum. A lake bed, long vanished, but water leaves messages, in sediment, in salt, in stone, and sometimes, in something that swam. Your breath slows. The stars above remain indifferent, but you feel the weight of a new kind of responsibility, because space is not just future. It may be past, and if we are not careful, we may erase what we came to learn, the bones beneath the dust. They may never speak, but that does not mean they are meaningless. You hover at the edge of a crater, watching the sun rise slowly over lifeless ridges. But even here, even now, you imagine the chance that something once stirred. And if it did, if even one cell once bloomed in that cold, then the cosmos is not just quiet. It is shared, Not just a vault of resources, but a web of histories. Stories that predate us. Stories we are not the center of. And that shift, from ownership to kinship, is a dream worth drifting toward. You float higher, leaving the crater behind. Its silence remains. But now it feels sacred, not because of what it yields, but because of what it might remember. You drift one last time above the quiet moon. Its crater's deep. Its secret's deeper. Behind you. Dust scattered by wheels. Drills. Footsteps not yet made. You carry with you a question, not about wealth, but about weight. The weight of action. The weight of memory. The weight of what we choose to erase. In pursuit of what we hope to build. Asteroid mining began as a whisper. A dream born in labs. Drawn on napkins. Pitched with starry eyes. It promised abundance without war. It offered platinum without pain. A treasure hunt in vacuum. Where no trees fall. No rivers muddy. But now you've seen more. You've floated with the rocks. Touched their patience. You've followed the lines. The grids and maps and claims. You've watched loss stretch thin, as profit swells fat. And you've listened closely, not to metal, but to the silence around it. That silence is sacred. It's not emptiness. It's not waiting to be filled. It is fullness. Without us, the bones beneath the dust, the slow stories buried in stone. They remind you that we are not the first to stir the cosmic sea, and we may not be the last. You close your eyes now, letting your mind sink gently through the layers of all you've heard. Drills humming, contracts signed, dreams rising in titanium domes, warnings carved in ancient ridges, justice unmoored, and always the stars watching, never blinking, never choosing sides. We asked, can space rocks make us rich? And yes, in a way, they can. They hold metals. They hold water. They hold the ingredients of new worlds. But true richness is not what you take. It's what you understand, what you respect, what you leave undisturbed. Because you listened. We are good at reaching, good at digging, good at claiming. Now we must learn to be good at pausing, at wondering, at hearing what silence tries to tell us before we fill it. Because mining dust carries echoes, and some echoes are not meant to fade. You begin to descend now, not to earth, but into rest, into stillness, into thought. Let your breath match the drift of satellites. Let your mind wander the unmarked maps. Let your dreams rest where no boots have landed. Tonight, you are not a miner, not a builder, not a claimant. You are a listener, and the stars have never needed more of those. Good night, explorer. Good night, dreamer. May the silence stay with you. May your questions stay soft, and may your journey never rush to answers. When wonder is enough. Thank you for watching the Bedtime Sleep. We share calm, curious science journeys like this every night. Subscribe to drift deeper and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Until tomorrow, sleep well beneath the stars.